Hi, today is 16th November 2024, and for the past few months, past 2 months maybe, there has been a severe smog crisis in northern Pakistan and in northwest India as well. What I've been hearing on the news is that New Delhi is severely polluted, and so is Lahore. They're saying these are the most polluted cities on earth right now. But in addition to that, this smog cloud, which can be seen from outer space over Southeast Asia, it's extended to Islamabad as well, and that's normally a very clean city. And while I'm in Islamabad, and what I've been noticing was that a few days ago I stepped out of my house and I saw that the sky was overcast, and I assumed that these were normal rain clouds, which I haven't been seeing a lot since the monsoon season ended, and the sky remained overcast for the next from day after day after that. And but then I came to learn that this was actually smog. That these are not what normal rain clouds. This is the smog cloud that I'm hearing about on the news. And but other than that, I haven't noticeably been feeling the effects of smog. It doesn't look like the smog is extending to ground level very much, because I haven't felt any stinging in my eyes when I've gone outside. No coughing or wheezing, nothing like that. But I have noticed that when I walk around Islamabad, I noticed an increase in the number of people wearing face masks, and discarded face masks lying about on the ground, which is something I haven't been seeing very much since the COVID-19 health crisis became basically a thing of the past. But so it looks like in Islamabad, at least, the smog is mostly upper level, upper atmosphere. And I guess it had to be in order to reach Islamabad from the places where the smog was originating, the sources of the smog, it had to travel through the upper atmosphere. So perhaps Islamabad's air for its people is relatively clean, which is a good thing. But what's the difference between rain clouds and smog? Because basically they're supposed to be the same thing, that they are a thick mass of water droplets in the sky, thick enough um, to become visible and block out the sun. And I think that I figured out that difference is really that for smog, it's heavy on the condensation nuclei, on the particulate matter, and for rain cloud it's heavy on the water vapor, because both smog and rain clouds, they are made up of they are formed when water vapor in the sky condenses onto dust particles, particulate matter. In the case of smog, there is in the case of wait first in the case of rain clouds, there happens to be an enormous amount of moisture in the sky, such that the air cannot hold it, cannot hold it in vapor form anymore, and so a lot of the water condenses onto whatever dust particles there happen to be, and become very big droplets, and eventually these fall out from the sky because they're too big for the air to keep holding them up anymore, and that produces rain. In the case of smog, there is instead a lot of a lot of particulate matter in the sky. The air is thick with particulate matter, and that means that whatever water vapor happens might be in this air, even if it's very little amount, it is still is compelled to condense around all these particles, all these dust particles, and that produces the white clouds as well, that smog looks like. So yeah, that's how it works, and that also means that smog does not usually produce rain, but today it did. After several days of the sky being hazy like this, I couldn't. Sun was obscured, the moon was obscured, it was blurry. I woke up this morning to see that, to hear the sound of thunder reverberating in the distance, and then later in the day there was a light drizzle all afternoon. At the same time that, and meanwhile, the sky was only partially cloudy. There was clear sky with sunlight on one side of the sky. On the other side, there was these rain clouds, gray rain clouds, and then there was light drizzle all afternoon. And after that, something amazing happened, which is that the sky started to clear and it became it became sunny for the first time in a few days. And what that obviously this rain, even though this rain that happened today, even though in Islamabad, even though it was a very light rain, pitter patter, it cleared out the smog. It seems, at least for today, and of course that's what rain does. I mean, the only reason why the winter months in Pakistan in northern India are tend to be so hazy, thick with this smog is because this is after the monsoon. So that's the first reason, is that this is after the monsoon, when the post monsoon season, the winter monsoon season, when the weather is very dry in this part of the world, and that means there's no rain to wash the smog, the smoke particles out of the sky. But the other reason, of course, is that in the winter monsoon, there's high pressure in this region. Of course, in the summer monsoon, there is low pressure over land in South Asia that attracts the rain clouds from the ocean. But then there's a complete reversal after the summer monsoon ends. Now there is high pressure in over land, which means air is now sinking. The air might come from the ocean, but then it travels in the upper atmosphere, and then it starts sinking towards the ground in South Asia. And what that means is that when it sinks, it heats up because of adiabatic heating, because it gets compressed near the ground, and that removes any water vapor, any clouds, any condensation of water, and that also traps smoke particles near the ground, because the sun heats in a low pressure zone, the sun heats the ground, so the air rises upward. That means any particles in the air go upwards into the upper atmosphere, away from where any human beings breathe it in. But in a high pressure weather, the air stays close to the ground, and that means that all the smoke particles stay close to the ground, and that's creating a serious health crisis that people in places like Lahore and New Delhi are experiencing right now. I've heard that in Punjab, since mid-October, 1.8 million people were treated for respiratory ailments caused by the smog. But as for the source of the smog, that has many sources. There is the all the smokestack industries in places like Lahore. They're mostly unregulated, and they are the fact that the vehicles in this part of the world, they often run on low quality fuel that isn't properly clean. And then there's the practice of farmers in Punjab, on both the Pakistani and Indian side, of burning their fields after harvest, of burning all the stubble in order to clear the fields. So that's producing all this haze, and it's a problem that's very difficult to tackle. I mean, and of course, now because of this crisis happening right now, the government of Pakistan is has woken up to this and is trying to make concerted efforts to reduce this pollution at its source. But that's a major challenge. I mean, you have to impose severe restraints on the economy, on people's economic activities, and that can have some pretty serious effects. But of course, it's going to have to be long-term changes that are going to be needed in order to actually tackle the smog crisis, and that includes things like greater use of electricity. More, if people start driving electric cars more instead of gasoline-powered cars, and also if there's more electrification, so that people derive their power from the electric grid instead of from combustion, from burning fuel and things like that. You can also have electric stoves, for example, instead, or just gas stoves as well. Well, I mean, gas happens to be a clean source of fuel, but of course, it seems to be in short supply in Pakistan nowadays. So that's why people are often using alternative sources of fuel, like coal or wood, which is very dirty. It produces all these pollutants. But there's going to have to be a lot of innovation that's going to be needed, not just government regulation. That might be a short-term fix, but in the long run, there has to be both economic development and there has to be innovation in order for people to, so that people start making use of technologies, of ways of doing things that don't pollute the air as much. And that applies both to our industries and our home technologies, and also to agriculture, because farmers have to find an alternative way of clearing their field, of maintaining their fields other than burning them. And there's so many possibilities. One idea I have is that we can in a city, because cities are frequent sources or potent sources of smog, because there's so much activity happening in one tight space, including burning of fuel. Well, in the city you can build up create infrastructure for piping exhaust from combustion exhaust away. That when you burn in stoves in factories, you don't just release the exhaust into the air. It should be piped into some network of pipes, pumped into a network of pipes, and then carried away. And these pipes can carry the exhaust away, perhaps to some place far away from cities, away from where there are large numbers of people, or they can be piped into one basically exhaust dump, where the waste gas is released in large quantities, that it rises up into the air. Even if there's a high pressure zone, if that gas is heated enough, it can rise up into the air and and go off into the upper atmosphere. So that is one idea that really should be considered, and India and Pakistan both should try to see how it's feasible, whether it can be done, because cities have so much infrastructure. This is one more facility, one more utility that we can add to it, a system for piping exhaust gases around. And there are so many other possibilities, but for now I've just given this. And of course, smog is a transnational problem. It does not respect any boundaries. So both Pakistan and India have to deal with this, and we have to work together on this. And instead of thinking in terms of borders when it comes to this issue, we should think in terms of airshed, because that's a term that environmentalists have come up with to describe areas in which smog problem is shared. Just like watershed is areas where the water flows, water from a river comes from a common source. An airshed is where the air from a pollution from a common source is spread across an area over a certain geographic region. And so we have to manage these airsheds uh, to tackle the sources of the smog, reduce the sources of the pollution, at with a view towards taking into consideration where those pollution would go, and how long they would stay in the air, and how much they would accumulate. That depends both upon looking at the geographic factors and at the specific weather conditions at happening at any given time. And of course, you have to take climate change into account, because climate change is one of the many environmental changes which are contributing to the smog problem. And we have to predict how the issue of smog will change in the future, and we have to take steps accordingly, prepare accordingly. So this is my message to Pakistan, to all of South Asia, right? That this smog crisis, this is much more severe than it usually is, and it should be our wake up call. It should be a time that we finally start taking real, effective action to reduce this problem, to reduce air pollution, and ensure that air all across South Asia is clean enough for us to breathe, for us to stay healthy at all times of the year. So thanks so much for watching, and please like this video and share it so other people can see it, and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.